Speak on this show, episode 33. Saturday morning, y'all. Y'all ready? Let's get into this. Let's go. Good morning, good morning, good morning. One more again, good morning, good morning, good morning. First and foremost, giving honor to the God who allows me to come to you in this manner on a weekly basis. I'm not going to let the devil take my joy. Not going to do it, not going to do it, not going to do it. Appreciate everybody coming back. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We get through these things. We work through these things. Not going to let the devil take my joy or what I got to do this morning. I appreciate everybody standing by a little later this morning, but that's all right. We're going to get it in. We're going to do what we do. We're going to do what we do. OT, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. Appreciate you. You know, technical difficulties, they come, they go. I'm the producer, the executive producer, the main producer, the actor, the presenter. I'm everything. I play all roles. It's like when I'm driving it, sometimes I'm the whole band on the song that I'm singing, but that's what I do when I do what I do. Gary Burns, good morning, my brother. Good morning, my brother. How you doing? Appreciate the support, bro. Appreciate the support. Yeah, so, you know, we do what we do, but let's go and get into this. rwcoolings.com. That is the website. RW Coolings over all social media platforms. Go there, like, subscribe, do what you do. YouTube page, Facebook, if you're watching, we're broadcasting live on YouTube and Facebook this morning. And after the show, you can download the audio through Spreaker.com or Apple iTunes. You make the choice. If you don't want to see all this, you can watch it off. I mean, you can listen to it on the audio portion of it. April Weed and sis, welcome back. Yeah, just a little bumpy road this morning, little bumpy road. You know, without controversy, you don't have success. And without success, you don't truly appreciate the time you have on this earth. Let's just put it out there. Timothy Jordan, good morning. Good morning, bro. Appreciate the support. Appreciate the support. Long time no here. All right, so 844-904-2665. That's 844-904-2665. No matter what the situation is, let your voice be heard. Say what you mean what you say. That's all we ask. If you call in, say what's on your mind. We come in as friends, we leave as friends. We do what we do when we do what we do here on the Speak on this show. Boy, I'm hyped now. Y'all done messed up. Look, got a little morning coffee. You like that? You like that right there? No tea, just coffee. No tea, just coffee. John Chaney, good morning, King. Hey, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate your support. What's going on back there in Frederick, Maryland, man? Appreciate the support, my brother, my fellow king. Let's put it out there. My fellow king. I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you. All right. So we got them formalities out the way. So let's get back into what we were talking about. Insurrection, the insurrection. So former President Donald Trump's advisor, Steve Bannon, said he wouldn't cooperate with the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th assault on the Capitol. President Biden rejected former President Trump's attempt to assert executive privilege over records related to the attack. Oh, and for y'all that don't know, it's a Help Me Understand Saturday. If you got something, chime in, help me understand what's going on, because I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give you my side, but if you got something to say, please chime in. That's all I ask. All right. Deeming the riot by Trump supporters while Congress was certifying Mr. Biden's victory a dark day in democracy, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Mr. Biden believes in the importance of providing Congress and the public a complete understanding of the events to prevent them from happening again. Mr. Trump has said he would assert executive privilege to block Mr. Bannon and other former aides from testifying before investigators. In a statement Friday, Mr. Trump decried the investigation and said this dangerous assault on our Constitution and an important legal precedent will not work. Now, let me stop right there for a minute, because this is the former president of these United States saying that this dangerous assault on our Constitution and important legal precedent will not work. Well, let's reflect back for a minute here, because if I recall, or somewhere I seen, or in the infamous words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, somewhere I read that Donald Trump was the instigator of January 6th. He was the one who pushed these people to come and march on Washington at this protest. Now, I'm not saying that he said that they should go inside the Capitol as an insurrection, but I'm not saying he didn't say go inside the Capitol as an insurrection. I'm just saying, help me understand how he can come out and say this dangerous assault on our Constitution when all those people who did the insurrection on the Capitol were going against everything written in the Constitution and the democracy of this country. But this president, former president, wants to silence and does not want the people who were involved with him at that time to speak on what happened that day or leading up to that day by sealing and trying to hold on to the records, conversations, and anything that went on leading up to January 6th. I'm a true proponent in the fact that if you have nothing to hide and someone asks you a question, you should be able to answer it. But if you have something to hide, you'll do one or two things. You either lie or you avoid. That's all I'm saying. So him trying to get these 4 people not to testify, I have a problem with that. And we've seen this throughout his whole presidency. We've seen it through other presidencies. Let's just be honest. They've had people where they didn't want them to testify about something because of national security and things like this. But this has nothing to do with national security. This has to do with the security of the Constitution of this United States that they want to put on a pedestal so often until they do something against the Constitution, and then they want to rework it to fit the narrative that they want to have for what they've done. In addition to Mr. Bannon, the subpoenas also were sent to former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, Dan Scavino, former White House Deputy Chief of Staff, and Keshav Patel, who was Chief of Staff to the Acting Defense Secretary at the end of the Trump administration. Benny Thompson, who was over, Chairman Benny G. Thompson, who was over top of this committee, the January 6th committee, told reporters late last month that Mr. Scavino hadn't accepted service of the subpoena. The deadline for the 4 men to produce documents to the committee was Thursday. Today is Saturday. The deadline was Thursday. Today is Saturday. What's been done since Thursday to Saturday? Because let me input this here. I don't know if a lot of you know about how the system works, how the laws work. But if you get a subpoena to show up for court or to show up to do something, and you don't show up within the time they come that they tell you to be there, then they post a warrant for your arrest. And once they find you, they put you in jail. You see a judge or whatever. They put you in jail and they hold you in contempt or whatever they hold you in contempt for not answering to the subpoena. So my biggest question is, what's going on here? Help me understand, because I got something. But let me go to a comment real quick. John Chaney, I just posted that the only reason this idiot hasn't been put in prison is because he's white. If Mr. Obama had ever done any one of Trump's many crimes, he would be in prison for life. And it's a true statement. Any of us who would do anything like this at our job, which he was at his job when all these things went on. Let's be clear here. The president of the United States is a position, but it's also a job. So he was doing things in his job that were unethical. And there's been no consequences other than the fact when they tried to impeach him twice and the people on his side of the aisle decided they didn't want him to be impeached. Why? Because their pockets were being greased just as much as his during his presidency. Lindsey Graham this week admitted that he rode and sided with Trump on many occasions because he wanted to support him, to get the support from others and be able to do what he has done up to this point without any consequences. But I bring this up about the subpoena. Thank you, John Chaney. I bring this up about the subpoena because I want y'all to think back for a minute. When President Clinton was in office, they wanted people to testify against him for a myriad of things. But there was one person who would not, present herself to the subpoenas, would not come forward to testify or anything like that. And this is who she was. Her name was Susan McDowell. A lot of you won't remember this, but her name was Susan McDowell. Republicans watch this now, Republicans put her in jail for 18 months on civil contempt. Why? Because she refused to testify against Bill Clinton. Let me say that one more time. Susan McDowell, who refused to testify against Bill Clinton, the Republicans who were in charge at the time put her in jail for 18 months. They would not let her out of jail until she said that she would testify against Bill Clinton. They held her in a jail cell for 18 months until she finally decided to testify. 18 months. But we're still here talking about the standards of subpoenaing, having subpoenaing, whatever you want to call it, on 4 members of the Trump administration at the time that they think played a big part in the insurrection, and they're avoiding the subpoenas. They're ignoring the subpoenas, and nothing's been done since Thursday when they were supposed to produce things, and today is Saturday. And none of them have been held accountable for not doing or showing up to what they're supposed to do. Definitely 2 standards. Thank you, Maurice Big Fall. But is it 2 standards? Or is it the standard in how we do things? Is it the standard in how we consistently look at who is the proponent and decide then whether we'll hold them accountable or not? And I'm going to jump around a little bit today, so y'all bear with me because it's helped me understand, but all these things are going to bleed into each other. So the biggest thing about this is they're trying to get executive privilege. So I highlighted this for a reason. And the core idea of executive privilege is this, is that releasing the information would harm the public interest. It's a privilege that's asserted on behalf of the country. The nature of the privilege shows that it's not something personal that goes with an individual. It goes with the office of the president. So if that's true, that's the way it's supposed to go. It goes with the office of the president and not the individual. When you're not president anymore, your executive privilege is out the door. Executive privilege is only attainable and only accountable for the time that you're serving in the position. So how is he going to try to say that he wants to use executive privilege so these people don't have to testify and produce the documents if the main title of him is former president, not acting president, which is why Joe Biden said he's not going to stop him from releasing the documents that are in the National Archives for them to be able to review them. Double standard. John Cheney, they had a complexion for the protection. Boy, you took the words right out of my mouth. I appreciate you, bro. Complexion for the protection. But let me get into this. Now, I don't like to do comparisons, as I always tell you. I don't like to do comparisons, but I'm giving you scenarios. Let's put it in scenarios, not comparison, but scenarios of how the systems alter themselves depending on who's in the system and who they're trying to prosecute or find charges against. 18 former NBA players were charged with attempting to defraud the NBA's health and welfare benefit plan out of nearly $4 million. Now, before I get into this, I want everybody to understand something. If you do a crime, I'm not going to defend you in what you did because what you did was wrong. What I'm talking about is the double standard, as was mentioned, or the standard that is not for us in certain situations. The defendants include Terrence Williams, Alan Anderson, Anthony Allen, Shannon Brown, William Bynum, Ronald Glenn, Big Baby Davis, Christopher Douglas Roberts, Melvin Ely, Jamario Moon, Darius Miles, Milton Palacio, Ruben Patterson, Eddie Robinson, Gregory Smith, Sebastian Telfair, Charles Watson Jr., Antoine Wright, and Anthony Roten. Also, Tony Allen's wife, Desiree Allen, was also named as a defendant. They each face counts of conspiracy to commit health care and wire fraud. Now, this all came out on Thursday. And as of this article, 16 of the 18 people have been arrested by the FBI and charged in a court of law. We have had 9 months. This is what? October? Insurrection happened January 6th. To this day, they still haven't, let me put it that way, they still haven't prosecuted all the people that they have found guilty for being on the Capitol grounds to this day. But this FBI investigation for the NBA players' healthcare fraud, they've all been brought into a courtroom. They've been told what they've been charged with, and the process is going to go on. But if you stand up on this January 6th insurrection, the people that went into the Capitol, which is a protected building, most of those people haven't been sentenced. And if they have been sentenced, they got probation rather than the jail time. Why? Which one do you deem more serious? Healthcare fraud or the insurrection on the Capitol? Also, we still haven't held the people accountable who planned the insurrection on the Capitol. Just a little tidbit, because I'm just trying to understand, and I'm trying to get y'all to understand. The defendant's playbook involved fraud and deception. They will have to answer for their flagrant violations of the law. Terrence Williams, was accused of supplying false invoices to support the fraudulent claims in exchange for kickback payments that totaled at least $230,000. Prosecutors alleged that when one player didn't pay Williams, he called the co-defendant pretending to be a plan administrator and said there was a problem with the claim. Strauss said the hope was to frighten the player into re-engaging with Williams, who was also hit with an aggravated identity theft charge in connection with the call. In total, the defendant submitted $3.9 million in fake claims and $2.5 million was paid out. $3.9 million in claims, $2.5 was paid out. So let's pause for a minute. 18 people, 18 plus one's wife, one spouse. $3.9 million. Doesn't say how long they've been doing this. $3.9 million. $2.5 million was paid out. But I want y'all to think back to some of the other shows I've done. And I want y'all to think about when I bring up the insider trading that politicians do, that they make all this money on it, never report it, and they're never held accountable, but for a small fine of $150 for making money off of commissions and investing in stocks that they know are going to go down or go up and everything like that. So that's legal. And they don't have to report it. Why? Because they're politicians. But the normal everyday NBA player or you, me, or anybody else is held to the fullest extent of the law when we do something wrong that deals with money. I just seen something the other day. Donald Trump supposedly lost $70 million in the DC hotel and tried to cover all that up in how much he lost. As I say, I don't do this for comparison. I do it so you understand, because I'm trying to understand. And I want you to help me understand why we continue to say that there's no double standards, why there's no, two sides of everything that we do, and there's no, and I'm just going to put it out there, there's no racism in the systems that are established in this country. Because I will guarantee you, these people are going to be held to the fullest extent of the law and what they can do to them. Smith, who played for the Houston Rockets, submitted claims for IV sedation, a root canal, and crowns that he is alleged to have received on the December 20th, 2018 dental procedure in Beverly Hills, California. Now watch this. Travel records, email, and publicly available box scores showed that he was playing professional basketball in Taiwan that week and did not receive root canals in Beverly Hills as represented in the claim form he submitted. At the time, Smith was in Taiwan's Super Basketball League, and he scored 11 points for Bank of Taiwan the next day in an 84-76 loss to some other team. So we know everything he was doing the day that he put this claim in. But we can't find out who planned the insurrection on the Capitol. We can't find out who funded the insurrection on the Capitol. We can't find out these things that we found out about this investigation, about something that was about to overthrow our democracy. Until we speak on this deep-rooted racism embedded in numerous systems, honestly, including the criminal justice system, this will not change. I got a segment I'm going to talk about a little bit of that a little later on, John. I appreciate that, though. But yeah, we're going to talk about the systems and the mindset of the systems and how we need to continue to speak on it, That's the show. Speak on it about these things, because as I've always mentioned, until we have conversations about this, nothing will change. Nothing's going to change. And we have to be a loud voice when it comes to this. Sometimes we get silent when we should be loud, and we get loud when we need to be quiet. Silent, whichever way you want to put it. There's certain things we need to speak up about, certain things we need to hush it. But that's another conversation. We're going to get into that a little later. At the times, you know what? I'm going to leave this NBA alone. We get the gist of it. Clinton Portis was just sentenced as well for doing the same thing in the NFL. Putting in the health claims that were unfounded and making money off them. So this is not something that just happens in the NBA or the NFL. It's happening every day. And I'm going to give you an example. And a lot of people ain't going to like me when I say this, but I'm going to say it. As a veteran, I'm authorized, and I'm not going to say authorized. I can put a claim in for any injuries that I had during my time serving this country. And I've done that for things that are wrong with me, things that have hindered me, things that have bothered me throughout years from things that happened in the military. But I bring this up because if they were ever, watch this now, if they were ever to do a deep dive into the fraudulent claims that veterans put in, and when I say this, I know I'm stepping on some toes, so y'all be with me, y'all bear with me now, of the fraudulent claims that veterans put in to get 100%, because the money is tax-free, if they were to hold those people accountable for the fraud that they've done, for the disability that they're claiming, you would have a whole lot of people in trouble. And I'm not saying that because it's something I'm assuming. I'm saying that from people that I've heard in conversations say that they keep going back to the VA because they want to get that 100%. And the reason they want that 100% is because it's tax-free. And the reason they're going back and pushing is not that something is ailing them. Let's be real here. It's not that something is ailing them. It's something that they see they can take advantage of a system. These NBA players are no different than the everyday Joe and John is walking down the street taking advantage of healthcare, Medicaid, or anything like that. And most of the systems and the doctors take advantage of these healthcare, Medicaid, and all that kind of stuff. But you never hear about the doctors. You only hear about the people that submit the paperwork. But with the VA, we have veterans out here who continue to go back and forth to the VA to claim something that is not wrong with them, but they claim it is, and the VA pays them for these things. But these are our tax dollars being fraudulently paid out to veterans. Now, I'm not saying all veterans. There's veterans that do have very, very bad situations from the time they serve. I'm not talking to you. So if you're offended by this, I'm probably talking to you. Because at the end of the day, those of you who continue to run back and forth to the VA claiming things that you know are not wrong with you and trying to get more of a check for free, you're hindering those who have issues that they're not being compensated for. The NBA, the VA, the NFL, any of these systems, work-related, workman's comp claims, anything you can think of that is health-related that people are putting fraudulent claims in affects all of us. Because the one person that goes to put a workman's comp claim in that should get paid for it gets denied. But the one who puts a fraudulent one in gets paid out. We have to be accountable for what we ask for when we claim things, when we put in for things, because things like this, most people slide through the cracks. Let's just be honest. Because no one takes the time to dig deep into what's going on. Now, I don't say this to cause a ruckus and everybody be in an uproar. Oh, you talk about the VA and talk about the veterans. Well, those veterans know who I'm talking about. And if you got a problem with me, 844-904-2665. That's the kind of mood I'm in today. Call in, let's talk about it. If you don't call in, oh well, then it's not an issue. But from where I sit, and from what I know, and from what I've heard, there's a lot of them out there. A whole lot of them out there But you do you. Do you. Because that's between you and your maker. Not me and you. You and your maker. You'll figure it out. Jon Gruden. Moving right along. Jon Gruden, NFL football coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. That don't even sound right. The Las Vegas Raiders. Jon Gruden was working at ESPN at some time, about 10 years ago, something like that. And ESPN, the NFL went through 650,000 emails, a trove of emails, because they were investigating something that happened with the Washington football team, formerly Washington Redskins. And in those emails, they found some things that some people have said, and Jon Gruden's jumped out at them. And Jon Gruden made a comment about the NFL Players Association president. And I'm trying to find his name. DeMarcus, what's his name anyway? I can't remember. I don't want to get his name wrong, so y'all hold on a minute, because I want to. DeMaurice Smith. DeMaurice Smith is his name. And this was during the lockout. And Jon Gruden made the comment about DeMaurice Smith and called him, quote, DeMaurice Smith, watch this now, has lips the size of Michelin tires. DeMaurice Smith, who is DeMaurice Smith, has lips the size of Michelin tires. Now, I've been around a while. Double nickel to be exact. 55 years on this earth. And I know in my lifetime, I've heard many, many times where people have referred to the lip structure of us African Americans, Black, whichever way you want to call it. And there's been many comparisons, many things said about our lip structure, our nose. We all heard it. If you haven't heard it, you've seen it, or you've been guilty of it, even within our own community. Let's just be honest. Somebody will talk about somebody's nose, their lips, or whatever, but I digress. Let me get back. But in this time, we all know what that means when you say that a person has the lip size of Michelin tires. But here's where my problem comes in with Jon Gruden. You said what you said. Cool with that, because that's how you felt at that time. But I'm a person, I give people time to grow and find the error of the ways. Because when the error of your ways come up from in your past, you should be able to embrace it and say, you know what? I did say that at that time. And I apologize. But I'm not apologizing for what I said. I'm apologizing for the impact it had on the person I said it about. And at this point in my life, I've grown to know that those things hurt. I should not have used those terms at the time, but at that time, that's how I felt. That's what I said. I would rather you tell me that than this BS he said. Because this is what he said. Gruden told the Wall Street Journal that he was angry at the time he wrote the email because of the NFL lockout and because of the direction players were taking under Smith's guidance in negotiations with league owners. You know, he wasn't even a coach at the time, right? He was just an analyst. He was a TV analyst at the time. But he says he was upset with the stance that the players were taking. But watch this now. And in this article, it says, perhaps Gruden is unclear on what a lockout actually is. So let's help. The owners locked the players out. The players didn't strike. They were locked out. Team owners kept them away. Gruden also told the Wall Street Journal and The Athletic that he was upset because of the labor unrest. But why? He wasn't a coach at the time, as I mentioned, hadn't coached in 3 years. And even if he were coaching then, the players have a union. Gruden is going with the story that he says people have rubber lips. This was his excuse at this point when they confront him. Yeah, he said he did say it, but this is what he went with. Jon Gruden says that he says people have rubber lips when he suspects they're lying, which is a new term to these eyes, but let's believe that part is true. Rubber lips and his lips are as big as Michelin tires, are significantly different in what they're used to say and how they're said. Jon Gruden. Somebody send this out to Jon Gruden. Tell him tune in. I need to talk to Jon Gruden real quick. Y'all cover your ears if you want, but Jon Gruden, let me give you a little hint. We understand how you've been raised, how you've gone through life with these biases, because we all have biases. Let's just be honest. We all have biases. We understand you have biases. We understand that you see things differently through a different lens because of your values, your upbringing, and all that. We get all that. We get all that. But when you cross the line to bring out certain characteristics of a person to demean them because you don't agree with them, shows how small you truly are. Because now my question would come into play. If I'm a player for the Las Vegas Raiders, or I was a former player with the Raiders when he was there before, or I'm a former player when he was at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have to ask myself, in all the years that I've known this man, did I really know this man? See, because all those things start coming into play and what people don't think about, because now he needs to walk into a locker room with a predominantly African-American atmosphere and justify his excuse or his apology, whichever way you want to look at it, of who, what, when, where, and why. Because you have to remember, most of these guys that are playing now are much younger, or were much younger at the time when he said this. But you can't excuse what was said at the time it was said with the fact that I'm sorry for what I said. Because if you were sorry for what you said, you would have been sorry at the time, because this was through email. This was through email. But then he would come on in the broadcast booth and act like everything was fine. That shadow, that shield that protects him, the protection for the complexion for the protection. Excuse me. Thank you, John Chaney. But these are the things that go to my mind when I see this, because I'm going to say it this way. I may not know that brother across the street, but if I hear somebody say something bad about that brother across the street, that's, if somebody I know says something bad about that brother across the street, I may know the person that said it, but I may not know the brother across the street. But if he felt so freely to say that about him and his lips, his nose, what he perceives for him to be, or what category he puts them in, what category does it put him in? Because if you feel that strongly about somebody you don't know, how strongly do you feel about me if you do know me? Because the only thing that truly separates us is the knowing. So you put him in a different category because of his nose, his lips, or whatever. Back in the day, all the different things, the stereotypes they put. We had tails at one time, all the things you can think about through history. And they still go on today. But they rear their ugly head as time goes on. And as much as we don't want to act like it happens, it happens. And I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with the N-word, because you know how I feel about that. We got to do better as well. But I'm not going to flip it on us today. This is about Jon Gruden and those like him. It's no different than when Howard Cosell was on a Monday Night Football game. He was talking about the receivers. I think it was for the Washington Redskins at the time. And he said, look at him. He's jumping around like a little monkey. Y'all remember that? Oh, I remember that. Howard Cosell. The one that Muhammad Ali made famous because his banter back and forth. That Howard Cosell, yeah, that guy sat on national TV on the NFL Monday night game and said, look at him. He's jumping around the field all over the place like a little monkey. And people thought it was funny. Jimmy the Greek said some things while he was in the booth. Were they held accountable? Will Gruden be held accountable? We'll see. We'll see. But it's news today, it'll be gone tomorrow. But them NBA players, they're going to be in the news for a long time. A long time. Jimmy the Greek. Yep. and I may be mistaken, it was Jimmy the Greek or Howard Cosell that said about the little monkey thing, but Jimmy the Greek had said some other things. If that's not the one thing he said many other things, and Howard Cosell said many other things too. So appreciate that, John Jane. But yeah, these are the things that when you think back to your childhood, things you've heard, things you've seen, the visions, the memories, this thing John Gruden did sparks a lot. Sparks a lot. Ahmaud Arbery. Let's talk about Ahmaud. Everybody remembers Ahmaud Arbery down in Georgia. You know, when they tracked him down, tried to say he was breaking into houses. He went into a new house to look like we all do. When we see a new construction, we go in there and be nosy. You know how we do. You know, if it's open, we go in and see how it's built. Not that we're going to buy it. Not that we're going to steal anything. We just want to see. Well, Ahmaud Arbery did that when he was out jogging one day, and then these guys down there shot him. They tried to make a citizen's arrest. It was swept under the rug by the district attorney down there and all kinds of stuff. You know, they're coming to trial. They're coming to trial sometime this year. There's been a lot of back and forth. It was February 2020 when they killed him. But there's been a lot of back and forth as far as what's going to be presented, what's not going to be presented. I think I told y'all before, they wanted to bring up Ahmaud Arbery's mental stability, and he had a gun one time he was arrested for, and anything in his background they wanted to bring up. Let's just put it that way. So now the big push is the attorneys for the father and son who are accused of shooting him and tracking him down and hunting him down. Let's just be honest, hunting him down. The big push now is for them not to be able to admit or submit the fact of this father and son on the pickup truck they drove to track him down, that there was a Confederate license plate on the vehicle. They don't want that. They don't want the jury to see that. They don't want it brought up. They don't want any of that brought up because that just tells you that anybody and everybody knows what the symbolism of the Confederate flag is, but they stay wholeheartedly and stand fast on the fact that it doesn't stand for that. But in a trial where a black man was killed by two white men who thought they were doing something that they were authorized to do because they had a complexion for the protection, they don't want people to know that they had a license plate on their truck that was a Confederate flag. But the Confederate flag does not symbolize racism. But you don't want the jury to know that they had this plate. It was a vanity plate. You know, when you get the personalized plate. They don't want people to know that he had this plate on his truck as the perpetrator who killed Ahmaud Arbery. Let that sink in for a minute. So you don't have a problem flying it over the capital of South Carolina at one time when they finally took it down. You don't have a problem with them when they raised it up at the Capitol at the insurrection and all that kind of stuff. But you don't, when people say it's a symbolism of racism, you don't want the jury to know that he had it on his truck. Why? Because it may sway their thinking about how you truly felt about that young man, not because of what he was doing and not because of who he is, but because of how he looked. I'm trying to understand this. And he just got the plate January 1st, 2020. That's when he put the plates on the truck. That's when he got these vanity plates, these personalized plates to put on the truck was January 1st of 2020. He killed Ahmaud Arbery, allegedly. Well, we seen on tapes. I'm not going to say allegedly. Well, allegedly. February of 2020. But we can't present that. We can't have them put that out there. The jury don't need to see that. They need to look at us as two country, down home, white men defending our city, defending our little community because he was in the wrong place. He shouldn't have been there and he was stealing. But what about them tags on your truck over there? Does that mean anything? No, that just means I like the Confederacy. Well, if you just like the Confederacy, why are you trying to avoid it being presented in the court of law when you go to trial for what you did? Because now those license plates signify that they're a part of who you are to the core. Can't distance yourself from the symbolisms that you walk around with every day. Can't do it. Now this one here, it's probably going to get a little testy for me. I heard somebody the other day mention that they didn't agree with the Black Lives Matter movement. They thought it was all boo. They didn't agree with it. They didn't agree with how they went about it, and all the talking points you can hear from whatever channel you choose to listen to. But when I heard it, I got a little upset. Not for the fact that the person does, not because of their opinion, because obviously they don't understand what Black Lives Matter is all about and what it stood for. Case in point, same thing about Colin Kaepernick. They hijacked the narrative to change it to be what they want it to be rather than what it truly is. But when the person was talking about Black Lives Matter, and then when I'm brought up, Colin Kaepernick and how they hijacked his narrative and everything like this, I had to ask a follow-up question to that, because he said he didn't agree with it, didn't agree with Colin Kaepernick, and then he brought up Colin Kaepernick was disrespecting flag and all these different things, and I went into a tirade. Let's just be real. I just let it go. You know how I do. But the question I asked was, and I'm trying to understand, for all the people who have a problem with the Black Lives Matter movement, and for all the people that have a problem with Colin Kaepernick taking the knee, and for all the people who had a problem with, the protest around George Floyd's killing, and all the other people, the Breonna Taylors, and all those people who have been killed at the hand of police officers that caused the Black Lives Matter movement to start. For all you people that have a problem with the Black Lives Matter movement, let me ask you this question, because I need understanding. I need understanding for myself, and I need understanding for my listeners. But I'm going to ask this question. If you're that upset about Black Lives Matter, that just happened within the last, 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, maybe, I don't know the exact amount, but it hasn't been too long. And you call yourself an American citizen, and you're all about freedom and equality and everything else you want to talk about under the Constitution of this United States, and you truly in your soul disagree with Black Lives Matter, let me ask you this question. Why aren't you upset about how long the KKK has been in existence? The KKK has been in existence for years and years and centuries in this country. But I never hear anybody who says they're all about equal rights and all these different things and the right to protest. They never bring up the fact that they don't agree with the KKK, because if you did, the KKK would be non-existent to this day. Just like you're trying to eliminate Black Lives Matter, put that same energy into eliminating the Ku Klux Klan. Then we may be on the same page. The next one. If you're that upset about Black Lives Matter, why aren't you that upset about the white nationalists, white supremacists that walk down the streets and say Jews will not replace us, carrying tiki torches and beating people up in the streets and all the different things we see? Where are you? Where are you? You can't call yourself an ally. You can't call yourself and say, oh, I got black friends in this, if you're not mad about these white nationalists, white supremacists, KKK movements that have been going on for years and years and years. But as soon as Black Lives Matter decides to stand up because we're tired, you don't like it. It's an issue. Why? Because we're standing up for something that we know is right, that you know is right, but you don't want us to seem as though what we're saying is right. 1619 is the year that the first slaves arrived in this country. Before it was the United States of America. From 1619 to 1776, when this country, when we became the United States of America, nothing was done to help those people in bondage throughout those years. And then this country was created in July 4th, 1776. And on that date, that could have been stopped at that time, but they chose not to. So under 11 or 12 presidents, slavery was still legal in this country. And you have the audacity, is the word I'm going to use today, to be upset about Black Lives Matter when Black lives haven't mattered for all these centuries in this country. However, for all the atrocities that the white nationalists, the KKK, the white supremacists, and anybody you can think of have caused and done to Black folks in this country for all these centuries, you never speak up to say it's wrong about what they're doing and why they're doing and how they stand on what they stand on. But you're so quick to talk out about Black Lives Matter and what they stand on. Why? Because they don't have the complexion for the protection. We don't have the right. You know, I'm going to go here. Dr. Martin Luther King said it best. He said, somewhere I read that this country, you have the right for the freedoms of this. But to this day, somewhere where we read this doesn't pertain to us, only in certain circumstances and by certain people. Because one thing we know to be true, the reason why the KKK, the white nationalists, the white supremacists, and all these white organizations are able to continue to be in this country and no one has a problem with it is because most of them are senators, congressmen, politicians, policemen. They're in your everyday life. And until we stop it, they're sitting beside you in your offices and you just don't know it. And the reason why we can't get rid of it and the reason why nobody's upset about it is because everybody knows who they are and everybody knows what they stand for. And it goes back to something I've said on this show many times. Your silence speaks loudly. Your silence speaks loudly about where you stand and where you sit when you have a problem with Black Lives Matter, but don't have a problem with the KKK or the white nationalists or white supremacists, the tiki torch carriers, or the Donald Trump affiliation of what they've done with this government that we call a democracy. No one has a problem with this, but you have a problem with one man who decides to take a knee to show support for those oppressed in this country, but you blackball him from having a job and being able to have a job to maintain his livelihood in this country that you say he has freedom to do. But wait, who am I? I'm just somebody with a microphone. I don't know what I'm talking about. You're right. I don't. But I see it. You see it. We all see it. And it's not the fact of whether we see it. It's the fact of what are we going to do about it? Where do we stand on this issue? And if you only want to talk about Black Lives Matter, let me give you some more examples. Black Wall Street, one of the most prominent areas in this country at the time, was burnt to the ground because it was Black Wall Street. You can give me the excuse about, you know, what they say started it all with the black man saying something to the white woman, which is what they always base it on. That's why everything broke out. But you can't tell me that the powder keg wasn't already there for them to just wait for something to happen to give them justification to do what they did. You don't burn down a whole city for one incident. Oh, but when Black Lives Matter protests and windows get broken and everything like that, oh, they're animals. They don't, you know, this, that. But when they insurrected on the Capitol, silence. It's their freedom. And we won't even get into the vaccine mandates. But these are the things going on around us that we need to get more involved in. We need to pay more attention to. We need to get people to understand your silence speaks loudly. Very loudly. The racism isn't as overt. It's hidden more in these systems. Racism is one of the easiest things to see, but one of the hardest things to prove. I just got silent because I want y'all to take all that in that John Cheney just wrote. We all know it's there. Hell, even the racists know it's there. But here's the thing. If you're doing something that you know is wrong, everyone associated with you knows it's wrong. And about all the people you know, if not one person has stopped you to say, hey, man, that's wrong. You need to stop that. You need to change that. There's an issue. There's a serious issue. Because it seems to me, no one wants to be the one to step out and say, this needs to stop. But here's the other part, and I hear this many times, and just talking about this today really opens my eyes to it. When did it become Black folks' job, per se, to stop racism in this country when we are not the ones who created it? Because as much as we yell from the rooftops, as much as we do and implement things and put things in process and everything, we cannot stop racism by ourselves. You know why? Because we did not create racism. We were a product of the racism. We are victims of the racism. You don't ask, let me stop because I was about to go somewhere I shouldn't go. Racism. Now I get passionate when I talk about this because this is something that is lingering and it continues to linger. It spikes, but it comes down. It spikes and it comes down. But the one thing it doesn't do, it doesn't come down to the point of inexistence. It just comes down to where it's tolerable. Let's just be honest about it. It comes to a tolerable level. And then it spikes back up and comes back down to a tolerable level. But anybody who thinks that racism is tolerable, that's an issue. That's an issue. And one of the biggest things that jumped out at me when I was thinking about all this, this conversation I had is, I said this yesterday and someone was shocked by the analysis I used. And I brought it back to 1619 as well. From 1619 to 1776, 1776, all the way up to today. We still see things that are embedded in racism and people being lynched and killed and hung and shot for unnecessary reasons by people that don't look like them. And the first thing people want to bring up is, well, what about Black on Black crime? Well, let's start here. Black on Black crime is not something that we created. Black on Black crime is a slogan that was created to separate us from what goes on within our community and what is done to us by the system. Black on Black crime isn't an issue, no more an issue than white on white crime, in my opinion. You can see the statistics. You'll see the statistics everywhere about Chicago and all these other cities. Y'all don't care about each other. No. Here's what you have to understand. Crime is crime no matter where it's done. You don't have to put a label of Black on Black crime or anything like that. You tend to kill people that's in the proximity of where you live if you're going to kill someone. You don't drive. If I live in the ghetto, I don't drive to the suburbs, just shoot somebody and drive back. It doesn't happen like that. Territorial is how it starts. Exactly. John Chaney. People commit crimes where they live. It's that simple. I've never seen a statistic that says how much white on white crime happens in a year. I only see it with Black on Black crime, per se. It's the only time I see it. But I brought this up about the 1619 Project, and I asked the question, I said, for all the years that we've been hung, crucified, lynched, and all the different things you can think of that have been done to Black folks from 1619 all the way up till today. And I asked the question, I said, in all those years, you have never seen a bill, a hate crime bill specifically for Black folks. With all the atrocities that have been done to us since 1619 on this continent, let's start with just this continent, not the United States of America, on this continent, which turned into the United States of America. Well, on this continent, all the people that have been lynched, killed, beaten to death, all the different things you can think about, all the way up to Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd. You have never seen the Senate, the Congress, or any politicians or anybody anywhere make any type of legislation for anti-Black hate crime bill. But when COVID-19 kicked in, and a couple, and I'm just going to say a couple, because that's all I can recall, a couple Asian folks got beat up in the streets. Within 2 months, we had an Asian hate crime bill on the book signed in the legislation like that. Explain that to me. How do you have a people that have been in this country before this was a country on this continent since 1619 and all the atrocities that have happened to them? You've never had any legislation to protect them, but you protect the Asian community within 2 months after a couple people have been beaten on the streets, where we see black folks being beaten by police on a consistent basis. And we're not even going to get into the crime, the George Floyd Policing Act, Reform Policing Act. We're not even going to get into that. Where's the legislation? And the next question I will ask is, why do you need legislation? Why? Why do you need legislation on the books of the law to say that you can't have hate crimes against Asians? Why do you need legislation? Well, we don't have it, but why would you even have to consider having legislation about hate crimes towards black folks? Because when you feel, and we've all seen it at our positions, in our jobs, and wherever we work, when you feel you have to sit down and write a policy, a procedure, a process at your job, something's gone awry. Or you want to contain whatever can go wrong within that process, within that policy and that procedures that you wrote. But of all the time that Asians have been on this continent, you've never seen an anti-hate crime bill for them until COVID came out. But you've never seen one for all the lynchings and everything else that's going on. You got the anti-lynching bill that came up one time. Ooh, okay, they just ain't lynching no more. They've evolved in how they do these things to people of color. Help me understand, y'all. This is where we are. This is where we are. And we'll continue to be here because no one wants to have the hard conversations. No one wants to have an honest conversation. When you start talking about not teaching critical race theory, but why? No one can tell me why they don't want to teach critical race theory. No one can tell me why the 1619 Project is such a threat. Why they don't want it taught, why they don't want it put into history of what has been written compared to what should have been written. No one can tell me why. But they can tell me why they don't like Black Lives Matter. They can tell me why they don't like Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. They can tell me why they don't want the athletes involved in politics. And so on, and so on, and so on. Appreciate that, John Chaney. Thanks for the input, bro. But you can tell me all these things, but I'm still stuck on the one thing I want to know. Out of all we talked about today, the one thing I want to know. When are you going to be as loud about the KKK, the white nationalists, white supremacists, as you are about Black Lives Matter? Simple. Should be very simple. But when you continue to downplay the impact that the Black Lives Matter movement should have in this country, compared to the impact that the KKK, the white supremacists, and the white nationalists do have in this country, you should be able to answer the question for yourself. And as John Chaney just made, young kings, young queens, read. For all my listeners who have kids, grandkids, read. Get them educated. Not on just what they want them to know, but what they need to know. See, our generation is the one to change how we go about things. Our generation, and it's nothing against the generations before us. Let me get that clear. Our ancestors did the best they could with what they had. This is no slight against them. What they fought for to this point got us where we're at this time. We got to pick up the baton and keep it pushing. And it's up to us to instill in our younger generation, our young kings and young queens, exactly what they need to know, how they need to go about getting it, and what they should put up with and what they shouldn't put up with. It's up to us now. It's up to us. And I'm hopeful, but I'm fearful. And I say I'm hopeful because I think we will be able to do what we need to do. And I shouldn't say I'm fearful, but I'm skeptical. Because we know what we got to do. But at the same time, we can't even plan a family reunion. We can't even plan a family reunion. Our generation hasn't planned a family reunion in how long? We got to get better. We got to get better. It starts with family and branches out. Community. That's what we all used to talk about. Community, community, community. We've lost community. We've lost hope. We've lost that cohesiveness that we need to have in order to move forward. And I see it, and I'm digressing a little bit, but I see it so much in the entertainment industry where everybody is pitted in a competition, whether it's comedians, rappers, singers, actors. It just seems as though when it comes to us that are successful athletes or anything like that, it's all competition. We can't be a brotherhood. We got to be in a competition. We got to get better with that. If I'm doing a podcast, OT's doing a podcast, anybody else you know is doing a podcast, it's not about the competition. What are we providing? What's the content that we're giving? What are we doing to inform? Watch this now. What are we doing to inform our people about what they need to know? Our people don't need to know about somebody pissed off at somebody on the Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's not what they need to know. They can watch TV for that. But if you're going to get on the microphone, we need to inform our people on what they need to know. Not all this, what they call it, ratchetness and all this kind of stuff. We got to get better on what we're providing, what we're putting out there into the atmosphere, and what we're trying to do with what we're saying. Because when we get caught up in the drama of Love and Hip Hop and Real Housewives of Atlanta and all that, it takes away from what we're trying to do. And that's fight this battle every day to get the equality that we're supposed to have. Now, I'm not saying any of them people, they making their money do what you do. That may be all for a show or whatever they're doing. But you can't spend all your time concentrating on that when we got bigger fish to fry out here in this real world. That's all I'm saying. Just saying, man. We got to get better. We got to get much better. Let's get to the mind, body, and soul segment, y'all. We can go and get out of here today. I know it started late today, but this was I had to get this show in today. I had to get it in today because I had some things I had to talk about. I need to get these things off my chest. Mind, body, and soul. I have a quote wrote down, but for some reason, I just don't want to talk about that right now. The quote I had down was, if you have a plan B, you've already failed. But I don't want to talk about no plan A's, plan B's, but I want to stick on what we've been talking about today. Mind, body, and soul today. This is the year 2021. Self-help, self-care, one day at a time. That's what we're doing. That's what we've been doing. We got about 2 months left in this year. 2.5, 2-3 months, give or take. But the mind, body, and soul today is going to be one of those that I think we all need to hear. What we talked about today is double standards. We've talked about racism. We've talked about, how, the ignorance of understanding what something truly is and rather than taking for what it is, hijacking it and making it something that it was never intended to be. So my mind, body, and soul today is going to be about be better. We got to be better. You know, we all have a past, as I mentioned many times before. I got a past, you got a past. We all got past. We got a lot of things that we've done in our past we're not proud of. Let's just be honest. But the people we are today, our past transgressions, right, wrong, and indifference have made us who we are. And there's a lot of things in our past and in our present that we overlook that affects a lot of us, all of us, but we tend not to nip it in the bud ahead of time. Whether it's dealing with your relationships, whether it's dealing with the people you interact with on a daily basis, or whether it's dealing with our interactions as far as how racism affects us. But I think one thing we need to understand is that when we get into this mindset and we get into this thinking that if it's not affecting me, I'm okay. Well, let's think about this. And I said this last week about Kamala Harris. We haven't heard from Kamala Harris. We haven't seen Kamala Harris since she's the first. She's the first female, first Black, woman of color, whatever you want to identify her, vice president in this United States. Barack Obama was the first. Lloyd Austin is the first. Colin Powell was the first. So you can go down the list with all these firsts that we've accomplished in this country as far as position-wise. But my question and my charge to you guys will be, why don't you be the first? Be the first one to step up when you see injustice. Be the first one to speak out when you hear somebody with that negative tone or that racist tone in their voice. Speak out. We got to start standing up for what we know and what's right and what's wrong. Because sometimes we're hesitant to not say anything because we don't want to be involved, or we're hesitant to say anything because we don't want to deal with whatever may happen from it, the controversy or the conflict or anything like that. We got to get better. We got to be better. We got to start standing on the principles that we know to be true. We can't continue to walk around quoting Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King and all the quotes he's ever had and not follow up with what he meant by those things, because we're in a position now because of him. We're in a position now because of Malcolm X. We're in a position because of our grandparents. We're in a position now because of our grandparents. We gotta be better. For all the fighting and all the talking and all the marching they did, we've gotten complacent. Let's just be honest. We've all gotten complacent. We speak loudly, but our actions are minuscule. We got to start pushing the envelope for what we want, when we want it, and how we want it. Now, some people will really listen and say, oh, he's getting radical. It's not radical, but sometimes you got to get radical to get your point across. Because the first thing they do, they never called anybody at the insurrection a radical, but they call any Islamic act a radical Islamic. Think about that. Radical is not a bad word, depending on what you're using it for and how you're using it and who you're attributing it to. But I say that because we got to be better at what we do and what we want. We got to be better in instilling the things that were instilled in us into our children and our grandchildren. We need to stand up and stand tall and speak loudly about the things that we don't agree with. We need to make our voices heard at the polls, not just voting for who we think is right. Because if you look right now, Joe Biden's in there and nothing has been done from what he said he was going to do. We said the same thing about Donald Trump. We said the same thing about President Obama. We've said the same thing down the line. We got to stand up and start standing on what we know we want. And we have to do this collectively, not individually. It starts on the individual base, but we got to come together as a collective group to start pushing the envelope about what we want. We have to be better. You know, it's that old cliche that we always used to hear, well, if you're a Black man, you got to be 10 times better. If you're a Black woman, you got to be 10 times better. You got to do your job 10 times better because you're never going to get the benefit of the doubt of how good you are. You got to continue to push and push and push. When we think back to our ancestors and everything they had to deal with, everything they had to fight for, everything they had to struggle for, everything, all of them raising 10, 12 kids in a small 2-3 bedroom home. And now we got homes with 4 or 5 bedrooms, 23 to 3,000 square foot homes that we're relaxed in, we're comfortable in because we worked hard to get there, but we didn't get here by ourselves. We can't get comfortable. We can't get complacent because we think we've made it. Because when you leave here, someone is going to fulfill that job that you had. Someone's going to be standing in the position where you stand. If you have to sell that house, somebody else will move in that home. But one thing you can leave behind is the information and pass it on and show by example who you are, what you stand on, and what you're willing to fight for. We always talk about how our kids, we've grown a soft generation of kids. I think we might be just as soft, y'all. I think we might have gotten soft as well. I think we got blinded by our successes rather than reflecting back on the failures. Watch this now, the failures. Not that our ancestors had to go through, but the things that they weren't able to do in order to be successful at what they wanted to be. We have all the opportunity. We have all the resources. We have the way. We just got to do it collectively. We have to be better. It starts with us. A couple weeks ago, I did a mind, body, and soul and look in the mirror. Time to do it again. We got to be better. All these things happening, you can't tell me. Yeah, there's laws. If anybody else, all these people, well, let's just put it this way. We have all these laws out here that we say prevent us from doing certain things. But I want you to ask yourself this question. If those laws out here are preventing us from doing certain things, how are other people able to get away with it and we aren't? The way they're able to get away with it is because they incorporate the lawful minds that read the law into the equation of what they're trying to do. We got lawyers that look like us. We got judges that look like us. We have some politicians that look like us. We have police officers, police chiefs, military members. We are incorporated in every aspect of this country. But you can't tell me that we can't make change if we want to. We just got to be better and push the envelope a little bit more to get what we want. We can't continue to expect the athletes to speak for us. We can't expect the entertainers to speak for us. We can't expect the politicians to speak for us. We got to speak for ourselves. And it starts at the ground level with us. We got to get more involved. We got to be better. And we got to start pushing the envelope. And the one thing we really have to do, call a spade a spade. Call it out when you see it. Because here's the thing. We are quick to tell somebody that looks like us when they're wrong. We are quick to talk about somebody that looks like us when we don't agree with who they are, what they're doing, where they live, all that, the gossip, all that kind of stuff. As loud as you are about those things, when you start talking about other folks, be just as loud when it comes to getting involved and being better. We got to get better. Local politics, we got to get involved. Exactly. And I'll have some announcements coming up in the new year. Not going to put them out there yet because I'm working on some things, but we got things we got to do. We got to get better. And I don't want anybody to think I'm on a soapbox here thinking that I'm better than anybody, that I'm involved in. I fall short just like everybody else. I fall short every day. And what I've realized about myself, and I think some of you will agree with me when I say this, I think sometimes we get complacent with where we're at and not realizing how much further we can go if we just keep pushing. We get comfortable, we get complacent. We feel that we're in a certain point that we don't have to push no more. I'm here. I'm guilty of it. I'll be honest with you. I'm guilty. But we got to push. We got to keep pushing. Because it's like I've said on the show a long time ago. You got a birth date, you got a death date. It's all about that dash. What did you do in that time of that dash? I reflected on my 55 years, that double nickel. And let me tell you something. I've done some things, but I know I got more to do. And I know if we all take that self-reflection and look at ourselves and see where we're at, where we've come from, and how far we've come, how we made a way out of no way, that fire start burning again. And once that fire starts burning in that furnace, you'll push yourself. But we got to be better. And the key is you don't have to be better than somebody else. Be better than you were yesterday. You don't have to be better than everybody else. Be better than you were yesterday. You're here for a reason. You're here for a purpose. Be better each day. That's where it starts. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. I appreciate everybody tuning in today. John Chaney, I appreciate the input, man. I appreciate you tuning in today. Everybody else to put input in, I appreciate y'all. And look, we had technical difficulties this morning, and I'm going to say it this way. God don't make mistakes. God don't make mistakes. Because I'm going to be honest with you, when I got ready to first start this show, I didn't have the energy that I had when I restarted the show. See, God has a way of making things happen to let you know you need to reposition yourself. You need to readjust. You need to get refocused on what you came on this microphone to do today. So I'm going to take that as a blessing that the first show with the microphone issues or the technical difficulties we had was for a reason. That's where it starts. You have to take the positive, find a positive in the negatives that happen to you on a daily basis. Just that simple glitch in the microphone caused me to reevaluate and refocus and look at things differently than when I turned it on the first time. I hope everybody enjoyed the show. I try to give you everything I can. This is where we're at. This is where we are. This is what I'm focused on. And we're going to have some big changes going in 2022. And we're still starting right now with small things. But 2022, we're going to make some things happen. And we're going to get more involved in the things that are happening out here. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Sabrina Collier Edmonds. Hey, great show. Appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for the support. Been a long time. Brian Hoodie, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you too, man. I appreciate, and like I said, I appreciate everybody for tuning in each week. I appreciate everybody for listening in. And like I always say, man, I'm not the end all to be all with the things I talk about. Don't get me wrong. I am not the end all to be all. My main focus, as I always say, my main focus with this show is if you turn this show on in the morning, is to think differently than you did when you first turned it on. That's all. And it's not to change your mind. Look at it differently. Have a different perspective on it and read. Get the information for yourself. I can give you everything, but you still got to go find it for yourself. Lady Michelle, appreciate the support. Thank you very much. Jacqueline Diggs, classmate. Awesome. Was late. We'll catch the replay. Appreciate it. Support that. Thank you very much. Gary Burns, appreciate you. Hey, man, I owe you a call, bro. Want to check in on you. I owe you a call. I'll be calling you sometimes this weekend. Jerry L. Page, my brother. Hey, I appreciate it. Hey, man, look, let me tell y'all, I appreciate y'all coming in. I appreciate y'all listening. And like I was saying, I'm not the end all to be all. I've never professed to be this great scholar, this most educated brother in the world, or anything that pertains to that. But what I will tell you is I take my time to do the research, and I take my time to put into words how I feel. And how I feel in most cases is how a lot of you feel out there. I'm not saying we all agree on everything, but I know I'm going to strike a chord somewhere to make you look at it and say, damn, I didn't think of it that way. But at the end of the day, you have to think for yourself. You have to come to your own conclusions. And the biggest thing, as I mentioned in the mind, body, and soul, be better today than you were yesterday. That's what it's all about. So I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. And as I always say, I want y'all to say it with me today. I know y'all know it by now. Come on now. Y'all ready? As I always say before I sign off, love yourself, love one another, keep your head up, and most definitely keep your faith in God. He's in control, but we can control certain things, and we just got to get out there and do it. Be better than you were yesterday. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all again next week. I'll holler at y'all. Peace. Love y'all.